Hello, everyone, and welcome to In-House Counsel Insights, which brings together in-house attorneys from different practices and industries and companies to share their experiences and tips with you. On today's show, I have Leena Ninan. She's managing counsel at Buc-ees. And she has a great background that you'll hear from today, changing industry and also going from outside to a non-traditional practice, back in-house, and you'll hear more in a bit. So welcome, Leena. Thanks for coming.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, no problem. So let's start with that background. So where'd you start your legal career? And not specifically, but outside counsel and doing what types of work?
So I would say my legal career really started when I worked as an associate at a firm that represented mortgage companies and their servicers in consumer bankruptcy. So I was creditor side. There, it gave me the court, bankruptcy court, state court, foreclosures, and JP court for eviction. So it did allow me a lot of court experience and representing a client in front of judges.
Okay.
And then after. I worked for the Small Business Administration in Fort Worth, which was a really interesting experience, having worked for the government. And it was a temporary, assignment. And but I really did enjoy it. Got to work directly with borrowers at the SBA, and I felt like I was really making a difference because these were all people who had suffered a lot of damages to their home during the various hurricanes that happened in 2005. So I worked for the SBA in 2006, and it was an interesting experience because basically at that point, for a little bit of time, the SBA in Fort Worth was the largest employer of attorneys in the DFW area. They were employing hundreds of attorneys, and they had them in. Mm-hmm. And then after that, I went to work for the bank corporation. At that time.
So pause right there. So I think that transitioned. So there were different types of roles for sure. Like you went from getting some courtroom experience to working on SBA files, but in each of those cases, you were representing creditors and banks, right? And then you leveraged that to go. Join who you were going to say, right? Which was a bank. And so how was that process? Was that kind of natural? Did you just fall into it? And why did you decide to go where you went next? So go ahead and tell us where you went next and, explain some of that.
So, given that the SBA position was temporary, and I came back home to Houston, my that I was looking for a job. And at that time she had been at this bank, Amity Bank, for about months, and they were in her department, the contract department. They were looking for another contracts analyst, and so I was interested in the position. I interviewed, and I got the job, and so that role afforded me the opportunity to really review contracts, learn privacy law to some extent in terms of Graham-Leach-Bliley Act, interagency rules in regards to non-personal information and all the over for vendors. So it's banking obviously regulated, so the contracts have to be drafted in a certain way and have to address certain concerns, especially in regards to privacy and due diligence. So that was a great experience.
What did you have to be an attorney to have that position?
No. At that time, no, you didn't have to be an attorney. It just really helped because of the experience and the knowledge. Having gone to law school, it really, the learning curve wasn't as steep in order to.
Okay, and were they all attorneys in that department, or was it a mix?
Well, it was a little bit of a mix. At that point, it was my friend and I who were the main analysts, and then we had our manager. And then as the department grew, it was mainly attorneys. It was almost, at one point, it was all who were contractors. And so that was 12 at that point.
Very interesting. And then how long were you at the contracts department at that bank?
In the contracts department, I was there from 2007 to to about the end of 2014. And at that point, I went over to our legal department. At that time, there was the legal department, and these, I guess, managing counsel, the senior managing counsel, that was her title at the time. She had that opening, and she wanted someone to support her and how she was supporting the bank, which part of her duties was to support the contracts group and the vendor risk management group. And because she was going to expand her roles and her duties, she needed someone to support her in the vendor related duties. So that's why I went over. I did for the next, I guess, about 7 or close to 8 years.
Wow. And so let's drill down that transition a little bit, because I do think that's interesting. I think there's probably a lot of attorneys out there that are in corporate, in maybe a contracts department or some other department, some other capacity, and they might be looking to transition into the in-house department. How did that come about? And do you have tips for people that are looking to do that?
Well, I guess, as always, it's always great to do your best work, right? And I was interested in the work that I did. I truly enjoyed the people I worked with. And working at the bank was really one of the best experiences I've had professionally. And it lasted a long time. I was at the bank for over 15 years. But that transition happened because of the relationship that I had built with that particular attorney in the legal department, our close working relationship, the fact that, I had a good relationship with my manager at the time who was willing to, let me go so I could expand my, career and grow professionally. So, it was a mixture of things, right? Doing the work, establishing relationships, having people notice the work that I did at the time. And, So, and that was the thing. It's to having managers who really do want to see you grow. And I fortunately, I had these type of managers, and unfortunately, I also had, at that time, she, like I said, she was a senior managing counsel. She appreciated the work that I did and how I worked with her. So that was fortunate.
You're very fortunate to have an amazing mentor. Did you just luck out, or is there any advice you could offer on establishing a good relationship with a mentor and seeking those types of people out?
I guess it was easier because of the role that I was in. I managed after I've been an analyst and a lead, I became a manager of the contracts group, and in that position, you have to work with one of the attorneys in the legal department. That was how it was set up closely, and so because of that, a relationship was established. And so that made it easier, right? Because she knew my work closely, and she knew how I worked with the various business groups around the bank. And I think that's what it was, really, more than anything. So had I not had that role and not had that opportunity to work with her as closely as I had before transitioning to the legal department, I think I would have sought her out anyways. Had I just been an individual contributor in the group, which I had been before, I did work with her occasionally, and the other attorney who had filled her role before she came to the bank. But she was different. She just took on that role much more thoughtfully than the person before her, and she truly made it a point to work with us closely, give us guidance. And so I think as a result, I guess the advice that I would give to people is, determine who it is at your company who can, provide you mentorship, who can provide you, possible opportunities, or, to establish a relationship. It's not just to leverage relationship to, advance professionally, but it also is to let people know of your work. Yes, it does benefit, professionally, but also to establish a true friendship with her, I was able to do that. So because all of those things combined, our previous working relationship, our friendship, all those things helped me to advance and get over into that role in the legal department, which is what I wanted.
It's amazing. Good story. So you're no longer in banking anymore, are you?
No, I am now in retail. I feel
okay.
I've done.
So let's talk about industry transition, because that occasionally happens in-house when an attorney moves from a company to company, and sometimes it's off to a different industry. So for people that don't know Buc-ee's, and if you're in Texas, you absolutely know what Buc-ee's is. I was actually in St. Augustine, Florida a couple weeks ago and saw Buc-ee's, and everyone there was talking about Buc-ee's at this event too. And some people were like, I haven't been, and they're not from Texas. That's why. But it's amazing, like the culture and like how popular it is. And for those that don't know, it's like an obligatory stop for Texans. I mean, I swear, if you drive, like you're going on a road trip, you got to stop at Buc-ee's for something and buy something, or at least just use the clean restrooms. So it's a gas station, convenience store, shopping marts all together in a massive scale that's almost like a theme park, right? It's an experience going to a Buc-ee's. So I imagine it's a very fun company to work for. So they're doing different things, right? Different things than banking. So, I mean, what was the transition like? I mean, was it just diving in and learning a new business?
Essentially, that's what it's been. I mean, a lot of things transferred, right? Because I do work and vendor-related work at the bank. That stuff, that was easy. Like, diving back into contracts, especially in regards to technology. That was the easy part. But the different part, going from a highly regulated, publicly traded to retail and a very closely held company, that is a big difference. And in terms of how decisions are made, differences are stark. So, I'm still adjusting to that. But it's been a great learning experience from a corporate governance standpoint, just to see how a closely held company is run and structured. They have various interests. Buc-ee's, the store, obviously, are the biggest part of the business, and learning that. The different aspects of that, right? Because, obviously there's the gas station aspect of it, because obviously it supplies gas to consumers, but also, like you mentioned, right, they sell a lot of items. So I've been involved in agreements that I've never touched before, from selling soda, pricing for that, or for candy, or general merchandise items. And so it has exposed me to different types of contracts I never had exposure to, so, and different types of issues that relate to all of those.
And I didn't think about this until you said it. I was thinking more like the business, like actually what they do, but the business is also the people and the relationships and how the business interacts with each other, right? Management and all that. So how do you go learning about that side of the business? Do you spend time just trying to interact with the decision makers and your clients essentially, and getting to know them and build those bridges?
Well, it's interesting in that, because it is a very closely held company, and the vast majority of the employees are store employees, whereas corporate,
yeah, right,
relatively small number of people. So in terms of decision makers, they're way less than what I was used to at the bank. In terms of number of employees, they're not that far off, but because of the structure of the company and the nature of the business, the decision making is much more flat than it was at the bank. And so that's been interesting to adjust to, I suppose, is a good way to say it. But it's been great because I really do get to know the thought process of a few people, because these are the few people who make almost all the big decisions. And that's been interesting, but I'm still learning from all the various business groups within the company.
That's fascinating. I didn't think about that either. A company like Amazon could have a lot of people, boots on the ground, but not as many, in the corporate side of it, making those decisions. So that's really fascinating too. So we're running up on time, but we met at HYLA. So I'll do a plug for HYLA, and that's Houston Young Lawyers Association. And you're a dear friend of mine from there. We co-chaired the Arts and Entertainment Committee. I still do keep in touch with a few other folks from HYLA too. So you were involved in that early on, and you were involved when you were in the contracts department over at Amagi. You didn't necessarily have to do that, right? How has that helped your career, being involved in things like that and other things just over the years?
Well, I mean, just from a personal perspective, in terms of how it's helped, I think it helped me push me out of my comfort zone, right? You know, being in that particular committee, having to set up happy hours on a monthly, that was just fun. Learning to have great happy hours, as fun as possible. And then, of course, the signature for Hyla is meet the, oh my gosh, is it Meet the Judiciary, Meet the Judges event that they do every year? And that was
They do that. I did the one on the cruise too, which I think they stopped doing that. That was amazing. I loved going on a cruise and doing CLE and meeting judges.
Yeah, I haven't done that one. I've never.
But yeah, okay, well, good. Well, Leena, thank you so much for joining us today, and it was great seeing you. Thanks for coming on.